Hi folks, I'm Mike and I hope you're well. So recently I released a video about the Total Studio 2 Max bundle from IK Multimedia, and within that bundle there's a collection of audio processors called the T-RackS 5 Max collection. Now if you haven't seen that video, you can check it out by clicking on the thingamajig above my head right now, and then you can come back here afterwards. Now in this video I'm going to be focusing on that collection of audio processors which you get in that bundle. Now there's 38 of them all in all, which is way too many to cover in one video. So what I've decided to do is just go through a few of them in the context of an actual song so that you can see how I make use of some of them. That'll be in the first half of this video. In the second half of this video I'm going to be taking a look about how you can use this collection for mastering, and most importantly we're going to be taking a look at the application which actually comes in the collection, which is really good especially if you're mastering an EP or an album. A lot of people overlook this and I think it's a loss to them if they do, so I hope you'll stick around and take a look at that. But let's start off by looking at some of the plugins I've used on this song. So this is a song called Wonderland which I released late last year, and it's a fairly simple song. It's just got some vocals, about 3 acoustic guitars, some acoustic bass, a little orchestra section, some backing vocals, and a few hand claps and things. So let's have a quick listen to how it sounds, and we're just going to be taking a listen to the first verse, which just has some vocal and a guitar.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way. And how is Dad? I hope he's doing okay.
So that should be fairly simple, right? Yeah, well, it's sort of simple once you get your head around it. So obviously I've used a few plugins on this first channel here, but a lot of the work is done with compression and reverb as well. And I'll show you how I've done the routing for that, because you may not have come across this before, especially if you're just starting out, because I'm using a technique called parallel compression. So we've got the main track here, which does a full send through to a bus, which is right at the other end of my mix, called vocal comp. Now on this particular channel, I put loads and loads of compression and limiting on there. The idea with parallel compression is you have your original signal, then you have your second signal, and then you blend them in together. Now the compression by itself sounds absolutely awful, but when you blend them together, it really helps to thicken the vocals up and kind of keep them on top of the mix. So both of those two are blended together and they go through to this channel here, which I call vocals main, and that goes off and we do a send to a reverb, which is on this channel here. So if we listen to all of those, just the vocal soloed, without anything else, it sounds like this.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
Okay, so let's see where I started off. I'm going to switch that reverb off, and I'm going to switch off the send to the compression, which I'll get rid of there, and I'll switch off all of the effects in that vocal chain up there, and then I'll switch off all of the inserts on the main vocal. So we're back to just the dry vocal as it came out of the microphone. Let's have a listen to that.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
Okay, nobody likes to listen to their voice just by itself, especially me, to all of you guys. So think of the sacrifice I'm making for you right now. So the first thing I did, if I switch on these again, is I added in some EQ. And for that, I used this plugin called the T-RackS Equal plugin. Now, the reason I use this is because I didn't just want to make these few adjustments to the EQ, but I wanted to just start to add a little bit of character in. And this plugin is really good for that. You can either use it in a very, very transparent mode, so you're just doing basic EQing, or you can actually add a little bit of color and character. So you'll see there's 3 main nodes here. The first one is just a low cut. That just gets rid of some bottom rumble. The second one here is just a little notch which I've taken out in the sort of low mids. I thought it was sounding a little boxy there. It's a tiny adjustment, but I did do it. And then right at the top here, you can see I've added a high shelf. This adds a little bit of kind of air to the vocal, adds a little bit of crispness to it. Now, if you look at each of these nodes, You also get to choose a type of node here, and that's where it adds the color. If you just have it on standard, I'm led to believe that that leaves it to be quite transparent or completely transparent. But if you choose one of these modes, it will add a little bit of character, and that's kind of based on the character of some fairly famous old vintage audio equipment, which I shan't mention what it was based upon, but think of some of the most famous ones and you're probably in the ballpark. So that's why I've used this EQ, not just to EQ it, but just to add that tiny little bit of character. Very easy to use, and let's have a listen to see how the vocal sounds with that bit on it.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
Let's listen to it without again.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you...
It's a very subtle difference, I think, for a lot of you, but it is there. And that's the idea with these kind of vocal changes, indeed other effects changes. You're just adding incremental changes to get the sort of more noticeable change at the end. So the next thing I did was add in a de-esser. Throwing that in here. De-essers, if you don't know what they are, you've never used them before, help to control the sibilance, the sort of, especially the sounds in vocals, which can sound rather annoying if they're too harsh. Now, I think on the second phrase here, there's particularly an S which stands out. You just have to kind of play around with finding the correct frequency for this. It will vary from microphone to microphone, from voice to voice, so you need to listen out for where it sounds really harsh. And then you're not getting rid of those sounds, you're just reducing the harshness on them. So I've put that on and it sounds like this.
Oh mother, how are you today?
Listen for this bit.
I hope you smiled along the way.
Just on that on smile, it did a little bit of work there. So that just helps to control it a little bit. And I usually put it somewhere there in the chain. Now, the next thing I wanted to do to add a little bit more character to it was make it a little bit less perfect by adding in some saturation. And for that, I've used this plugin from T-RackS called the Saturator X. Now, actually, this passage, it's not so evident. It gets a little bit more evident a bit later in the song when I'm singing a bit louder. It goes up into the red a little bit and just adds a little bit of grit to the voice, which I don't mind at all. There's lots and lots of different modes for you to choose from, so you just have to experiment with this. And I've used this tape 1 saturation to begin with. So it sounds like this.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
Now, I like to use this in the linked mode so that as you add more gain, it actually lowers the output of the volume. So you maintain the actual level. So you're changing the sound without changing the volume of it so much. So that's a nice feature to have. You can switch it off, but I like to use that feature there. I found that really handy. So you're probably thinking, not hearing much difference, Mike. Let me know in the comments if that's what you're thinking. It's okay. We can share our inadequacies with each other. I can promise you there's not that much difference so far. But let's have a listen to the vocal without anything at all on it.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
Now let's have a listen with everything so far switched on.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
So it's just beginning to feel a little bit thicker and it's got a little bit more top in there. It's not massive at the moment, but as I say, you don't need to do big changes. The next thing we're going to look at is what I've done on this compression track, this parallel compression track. So I will turn that on. You can see it goes through the full signal there. So I'm hitting it really hard down here. And it goes through to this channel here. Now, I've got 3 effects in here all in all, and the first one is an actual compressor. Now, normally we like to use our ears, but in this occasion I'm going to ask you to use your eyes, because if I just play this, look what's happening to this needle.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
There's a lot of compression going on there. I wonder if I can just let you hear it all by itself. I'll turn this off. and have a listen.
Oh, mother, how are you today?
That's the compressed track by itself.
Hope you smiled along the way.
Sounds dreadful, but it works when you blend it in later on. So I'm using this Black 76. It's based upon a really, really famous compressor, an outboard compressor, and I'm not going to mention the name of it, but you probably should know which one it is. The next thing I'm doing is doing some limiting. So this particular plugin is called the Precision Compression Limiter. I'm not using the compressor on this, just the limiter. I'm just pushing this. So with the compressor and the limiter, I'm really squashing this up so there's hardly any dynamics. Everything's being pushed loud.
Oh, mother, how are you today?
Now, I should say, when I say loud, it's not literally loud because I've got it turned down on the fader. If I turn the fader up to parity, have a listen.
Oh, mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
Okay, so that's not really a sound that I really want from my vocal. It's heavily compressed there, but as I keep saying, when we blend it in, it'll sound good. Now, the last thing I've done on this particular channel is use this equal EQ again. This time I've decided just to add a little bit of top end, it's almost harshness to that compression there. So that's what you can see there, a top shelf and a little boost around the 3K mark there. Now, let's switch all of those off. I'll put on my original vocal track again. So now what you're hearing is the vocal blended in with that parallel compression. Have a listen.
Oh, mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way. And how is Dad?
Okay, so far so good. So the next thing that happens is those two get blended together and they go through to this channel, and this channel has a send to the reverb. And this is really the last part of my signal chain. So I'll switch off the reverb, which I've got there. I want to show you the original one, which I chose, which is the CSR Hall reverb. Have a listen to this.
Oh, mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
So it's a really nice sounding reverb, and it probably would sound nice if, especially if the whole song was just a vocal and a guitar, maybe a bit too much of it, but it's great. I love the sound of this reverb, but not for this particular song. I didn't want something which was going to sort of muddy up the mix so much. So what I actually went for was the plate reverb, which is called the CSR plate, our classic plate, and this is the sound that I'm getting from that.
Oh, mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
So a lot shorter tail on it, and it just keeps it feeling like you're in a smallish space. It still sounds like a lot, but when you put it in the mix, it doesn't sound quite so crazy. Now, the only thing that I've really done to this, and I will interject here that I don't like to overthink these things. I know these plugins sometimes have lots of controls. That doesn't mean you have to use all of them. You can actually just use it as is if it sounds good to you. But I've done a little bit to this, and if we go to this advanced selection here over on the color tab, what I've done here is I've just used a low cut filter. So we're not adding reverb to the low end of the vocals. I tend to find if you do that with instruments and vocals, you get this build up of low end, which just sounds really, really rumbly. So I almost always do a low cut, and that ends up with this. If I didn't have the low cut on, if I just put it all the way up here, have a listen.
Oh, mother, how are you today?
I'll just bring it down here.
Oh, mother, how are you today?
And it's just sort of hitting the top end of those. Sorry, I actually got rid of all of it there. I'll go the other way.
Oh, mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
That's with the low end in, sorry. And moving up there.
Oh, mother, how are you today?
I can go up a bit.
I hope you smiled along the way.
And that's the last part of the chain. So let's have a listen to that in the context of the mix. And I'll try and do this quickly so that we switch everything off so you can hear what it sounds like, not treated at all, as it came out. So we'll get rid of that reverb, and have a listen.
Oh, mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way. I was there.
Sounds pretty flat. Let's insert, we'll do the first collection of inserts.
Oh mother, how are you today?
Start getting somewhere. Now let's add in that parallel compression.
Oh mother, how are you today? I hope you smiled along the way.
And then the reverb.
And how was Dad? I hope he's doing okay. You're probably wondering where I've...
So I hope that gives you a few little insights to just a handful of the audio processes which you get in this collection. So next, I'm going to be moving on to some mastering. So here we are looking at the mastering environment that you get with T-RackS. Now, if you're like me, you may not have installed this by mistake when you went through the installation process. So I'm just going to look at that quickly now. If we bring up the installation window you have here, if you're like me, I normally just install one of the versions of the plugins because I don't like to load up my system with lots and lots of versions when I'll just be using one. And I also tend to uncheck the standalone executable if it comes with an installation, because most of the time I don't use them because I'm just using these as plugins within my DAW. But on this occasion, you do want to make sure you have that checked when you install. So if you didn't do that, just go back and reinstall quickly. It doesn't take very long, and just make sure you've got that checked. And that will make sure that this program that you can see on the screen now is available to you. Now, there's lots of cool stuff that you can do here in terms of mastering, but it basically falls into the brackets of actual audio processing, where you actually be changing the sound of your songs, and the sort of preparation of the metadata and things for an actual release of an EP or album especially. You could use it for singles as well, but I think it's really useful for EPs and albums. So let me give you an idea of what I mean by that. So I've got actually 4 songs loaded up. You can see them. I know it's very small on the screen. We don't really need to zoom in. Of those 4 songs there that I've got loaded up. Now, if I go up to the top here, I can open up this. This is the arranger tracks. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Now, this is a place where I can do several things. First of all, I can actually title my songs, which I've done here. I've given them the proper English titles rather than the file names they had when they originally came in. Then I can put in things like the artist name here, which I've done here. Things like the ISRC code, you can put that in there. If you don't know what that is, then don't worry about it. And then last of all, right over on the right hand side, hidden by my big ugly head, you can put in the artist album name and the album title as well, and so things like the UPC codes, which again you may not know what they are, don't worry about it too much. But yeah, this is a great place where you can set up that metadata for those songs. You can also do great things like change the order of the songs, so I can just drag them around here, and after a couple of seconds you'll see a few things got swapped around there, so I can change the order of my songs there. And then usually what I do is when I export the stereo wave file from my DAW to bring into here, I'll leave a good amount of space at the beginning and the end, at least a few seconds or so, and I'll actually do my topping and tailing, as I call it, in my actual mastering environment like this. So this has got a big long bit of space at the end of this song, so I'll just drag it in there so that I'm getting rid of that sort of dead space at the end. And then I can do a nice fade out as well, just by dragging that little triangle across there. So you can do lots of useful little things there with your songs. So that's the basis of the sort of metadata and preparation for export. So let's take a look at the actual processing side of things, because I think that's what you're probably most interested in. So when you first load up your songs, each song gets this one plugin, this T-RackS one plugin by default. Now, you can get rid of it. You don't have to use this plugin, but I think there's a kind of a reason why they do it, because it is a really, really useful plugin for mastering. In fact, really, you can do all of your mastering just using this plugin, in my opinion, and that's more or less what we're going to do in this video. But should you wish to use other plugins, say like this compressor here, you could just drag it across from the rack at the side and drop it into your chain. And if you want to change the order, you can just move it around like that just by dragging. You may also choose to bring something in and put it, use a little on a different routing there, a different chain there. And that's another thing that you can do. I tend to use just a linear approach, all in a straight line. And in fact, in today's video, I'm really just going to use these 2 plugins here, One and Master Match. So I'll get rid of that compressor there. Now, when you have one loaded up, it actually goes to a default setting, which pumps the volume up an awful lot, and that's a little bit misleading. So I've just prepared here on this song, and I've got the volume down to where it was to begin with on this song. And I'm also going to choose a part of the song to listen to, not from the beginning, but I'll go in and I'm just going to use this selection here. Just to make sure I'm just listening to the kind of last chorus section of the song. That's the bit that I'm often most interested in, especially when I'm mastering. So that sounds like this.
I've been down the rabbit hole.
Now, that probably sounds really quiet to you, and I've left that as quiet as I actually exported it from the DAW. I like to leave lots of room for mastering, so I tend to hit a peak of around about -6 dB, which is pretty quiet actually, but I didn't want to push the volume up for this video because it is going to get louder as we work through this process. And in fact, that's one of the first things that I'm actually going to do. So using the volume knob on this T-RackS 1 processor, I'm just going to add a little bit of volume. Now I'm just going to move that little selection in a little bit there, sorry, because I've just realized we want to listen actually from here just a little bit. Okay, so we're not listening to that slow build up there. So I've added a little bit of volume there. Now that's not just a volume control, it's actually doing a little bit of limiting, so you can really push it around. And it's not going to necessarily, when it will eventually peak, but you've got lots of scope there to add a lot more body to the sound of the track without peaking. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is use this push control here. The push control is a little bit more like compression, I would say, under the hood. There might be a little bit more going on other than that, but I like to add a little bit of this in as well. Let's have a listen. Maybe fall. And that's the great thing about this particular plugin. You don't really need to know what all these controls do. Just push them around and see how it sounds to your ears when you do that. Now, these ones are easy because they have made it quite a bit louder all by themselves. The next thing I'm going to do is listen to the sort of more the EQ side of things, and that's on this side of the processor. You can see 3 different controls here: air, focus, and body. So right down at the bottom here is the body. That's the sort of low to mid, the low mids of the mix there is what the body controls. Then you've got focus, which acts a lot on the mids, and then you've got air, which is really at the top end of things. So let's start off by adding some air. Now, as I do this, it makes some dreadful clicky sounds on my particular setup, so I'm not going to listen to the track as I do it because that would irritate you, but I'll just push it up a bit and I'll have a quick listen. Maybe tall, maybe fall. Okay, that's okay. If I put it extreme, have a listen. That's what it's doing. And I find that useful. You know, if you can't really hear what it's doing, push it to its extreme, then you can hear what it's doing, then you can dial it back to something which sounds a bit more natural. So I'm sure around about there is going to be fine. I think I'll leave the mids alone, and I might just push the body up a tiny amount. Maybe tall, maybe fall. Hear what's happening there when I use it. Okay, that's fine. So it tends to be I get that little clicky problem on this side of the processor. Let me know if that's happening for you as well. I don't know if it's just on my system or a little bug in the plugin itself. Now over this side, I don't get that sound, so I can just push them around as I'm listening. And let's start off with the analog control. This is kind of mostly saturation, I would guess. Let's see what that sounds like. Maybe tall, maybe fall. I met a man. And I don't mind at all if I add lots there. It's so subtle that I don't mind really pushing it around. Don't be scared to push your knobs all the way around to the end, guys. It's absolutely fine. That's why they go that far. Now, next we're going to look at the transients. Now, so these are it's going to affect actually not so much on this song, but if you had a song with actual drums and things in it, you may use this to sort of pick out perhaps your snares and things a lot better, or hi-hats. Let's have a listen.
Maybe told, maybe fall.
Now, I kind of like what it's doing to the acoustic guitar there. It's got a little bit more of a tack on it there, so I'll leave that there. And let's have a listen to see if I want to add any bass punch.
Maybe told, maybe fall.
Okay, that's great. Now, what I think is the kind of magic knob on this, and that's why I've left it till last, is the width control here. This is really just going to add more width to the whole thing. Now, you can go overboard on this, and I wouldn't recommend using it on all songs. You know, that's one thing. If you've got a sort of an EP or an album, and you just use this all over the place, it can be a bit much. Use it extreme at first, as I say, to get to hear what it's doing, and then dial back from there. So let's do that.
Maybe told, maybe fall.
You can hear it's really pushing those strings out to the side especially, so now I'll dial it back.
Told, maybe fall. I met a man.
Okay, that works nicely for me. And that's it for the one. I mean, really, this is why I love this. There's not a lot to say about it. You load it up, you push things around. If you like the sound of them, you keep it like that. If you don't, you put it back to where it was. It's as simple as that. You don't need to sort of know lots and lots of things, technical details about doing this. It's helpful if you do know the technical details, so that if it isn't delivering exactly what you want, you can delve into some of these other plugins over here and be a little bit more precise. But for me, 90% of the time these days, this is getting me 90% of the way there. So let's have a look at this thing called Master Match here. I think this is a really, really interesting plugin and really, really easy to use. What this is going to do is attempt to match your song to a reference track. So what's a reference track? A reference track is probably a commercial song which you would like to be close to the sound of sonically. And a lot of people ask me about reference tracks. They say, well, which reference track do you use? And the answer is, well, no one particular reference track. It depends on the song which I'm actually producing. And I'll try and think of just any song from any point in history where I think, yeah, I'd like it to sound sonically kind of like that song, roughly. Very, very helpful. You don't have to use one reference track. You can use more. But for today, we're going to keep it simple and just use one. Now, I'm going to switch the plugin on down here, and I'm just going to switch this, which is going to put it in the chain. And I'm going to load up my reference track. Now, I'm not going to tell you which reference track I'm using because YouTube is funny about copyright and stuff like that. Even if I mention the name of the song which I'm using, it can cause problems for me. Go figure. Anyway, I'm going to choose a part of that song by dragging this over here, which I know is similar to the part that I'm listening to in my song. It's a chorus towards the end of the song, or yeah, towards the end of the song anyway, kind of in the middle. And that's the part which I would like to match mostly, and I'm comparing that part to my part of the song. Now, I could play it here just to make sure, but if I play it, then the sound of that will be on the video and I'll get into trouble. Don't want to do that. So I don't actually have to play it. I know that it sounds okay. All I need to do is click on this button, which is Learn References. I'll click that. It, quick as you like, analyzes that song and comes up with this EQ curve, which you can see here. Now, it does a few things. You know, I'm not really sure exactly what it does under the hood. It does match EQ, but I think it does it definitely does some level matching, things like that as well. So there you go. Now, the next thing I need to do is play my actual song to the plugin. So I click here on Learn Source, and then I'm going to click on Play at the top here. Now, Now, under normal circumstances, I'd probably play a little bit more than that, and I'll just click on that learn source again. Now you'll see it's got two curves there. One is from the reference track, one is from my actual track. Now if I want to match the two, so I want to make my song a little bit closer or very much closer to that reference track, then I just click on this match button here. It does a little bit of squiggling around and you see some nice little things happen on the screen there, and it's done its job. So let's have a listen to that song now.
Maybe told, made me fall. I met a madman.
So I think that's done a really, really great job. Now, if you wanted to create a commercial master, of course, you may want to send it off to a mastering engineer, or you may want to use an online service. But if you want to give it a go yourself and you're just getting into it, this is not a bad place to start. The other reason that you would want to do some quick mastering like this is, you know, if you've got some clients, if you're recording for other people and they want to have a listen to the track so far, I'd send them at least as kind of a rough mix with a little bit of mastering on there as well. So they're not listening just to the raw mix. Get it as close as you can to the final product, and this could be a very, very good tool for that indeed. So that's it from me for today. I hope that's given you a nice insight into what you get in this particular collection. As I say, I haven't covered everything, but hopefully covered enough to give you a bit of a taste of what you do get in the collection. If you did like this video and you found it helpful, make sure you hit the like button. That helps me out because it tells YouTube that it should show other people this video. If you didn't like this video, make sure you hit the dislike button twice. And if you like this kind of content, do please make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the bell on YouTube so that it tells you about my other videos, and I'll see you in the next video.